This episode is sponsored by Solar Optix Energy Services, a division of Neu-Lite Electric Inc.
Welcome to Western Synergy, a podcast about entrepreneurs, innovators, and just generally awesome people in Western Canada changing the business landscape. I'm here at Neu-Lite, joined by Bryce Allred, and my name's Nathan Johnson. Today we're going to be learning, hopefully, quite a bit about solar and everything related to Neu-Lite. Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Nathan.
Why don't you go ahead and tell me a little bit about yourself and let myself and the audience know more about your history.
Well, Nathan, I've been an electrician in Lethbridge for over 30 years. I've worked at 2 or 3 different contracting companies here in town. And about 2013, I developed an interest through an RFP, or a request for proposal, from one of the utilities in Alberta looking for solar installers. We just happened to have the safety certifications that were required to be a contractor under that program. So I applied, and we were given a territory from south of Calgary and pretty much between Fernie and Medicine Hat.
Was it like one large job or a bunch of smaller ones?
No, it was a program run through the Municipal Climate Change Action Center, the MCCAC.
Okay.
And they were providing some funding to the utility to pass on to customers to put in solar. I knew nothing about solar. I had, I'm an electrician, but I knew nothing about the renewable resource game at all at that time. So the utility came down and gave us a little bit of training and basically said, away you go. So we cut our teeth back in 2013 and started designing. We're what we would call an EPC, engineering, procurement, and construction.
Okay.
So we take care of everything. We design it, we engineer it, we pull all the permits, we get her built, and we commission it.
Okay. Was it a pretty popular program?
Yeah, it was. It took off pretty good. It didn't last all that long. A bit of wasn't funny at the time. Looking back, it's kind of funny. My ex-partner and I had, I left the company that I had founded with a different partner, electrical company here in town. Decided we're going to go off and pursue the solar. So I had given basically my notice. We had leased an office space and a little shop downtown. And within 2 weeks, the utility that we were working with called me up and said, I hate to tell you this, but the MCCAC program is done. You've got 30 days to sign as many projects as you can. So here I am. I have no job. My ex-partner had done the similar thing. So there was no income. There was nothing going on. And we had 30 days to try to come up with some business.
So I feel like this is going to turn interesting.
Well, we had 4 proposals out to 4 large farming groups. And I thought if we can just get one of these, it'll be enough revenue to get us through the summer, get us in. This was about in May. So I thought if we could make it till September, catch our breath, and try to figure out what we were going to do. How are we going to move forward here? Back then, the price of power was so low, you really couldn't give solar away to anybody unless you had a good subsidy.
Yeah, I remember I had a client, and just for the audience, I was a CEO of Hagen Electric for a while, so familiar with the industry. And one of our clients that uses us for electromechanical processing, I know they were really hemming and hawing over a 55 kilowatt solar install, just because the power company kind of was saying that, like, oh, hey, we'll kind of fix some things, for you. And they really wanted to adopt it. And I know at that time, there was a lot of up in the air about the cost of power is so low. How is solar panel going to be a go? So I'd love to learn a little bit more about that too, also while you're chatting.
For sure. But as luck would have it, we signed all 4 contractors. We had over $1.5 million worth of work that first year.
Oh, wow.
Got us through the whole next year, and then we were kind of off to the races. So that's sort of how that started. And then I knew one of the owners at Neu-Lite. I knew pretty much all of the owners at Neu-Lite, but a couple of them had been my apprentices back in the old King Electric days. So as luck would have it, my ex-partner and I split up, and Neu-Lite was wondering, well, what are you going to do? Because we had done some work together. They would support me and I would support them on different projects. So I had no path forward. I didn't know what I was going to do, go look for a job, keep my company open. I just was kind of just treading water at that time. So Steve Schaefer from Neu-Lite came to me and he says, why don't you just join our family? Just join Neu-Lite. We can use your set of skills. We can help you grow. And so that's what I did 5 years ago. They bought out my trade name, and basically gave me a home.
Nice.
So I've been here for 5 years, and I help them with industrial and commercial work, and they support the solar as well.
So what's the official role?
So it's whatever I decide to call myself that day.
So so I'm assuming right now it's Grand Vizier.
There you go. Yeah.
Like something Jafarish.
Basically, renewable resource manager.
Okay.
So my company was called Solar Optix Energy Services. And we still run it as Solar Optix, a division of Neu-Lite Electric.
And so you said you've been doing that specifically for the last 5 years. So in like Alberta, I know renewables have been sort of a hot topic in discussion, and even a little bit in Western Canada. My stance has been like, why not everything, right? Like Alberta should be the best at, if the word energy's in it, Alberta does the best at it, period.
Yeah.
And so how has your journey kind of been with the renewables, working in like Southern Alberta is also obviously a little different than Middle Alberta and Northern Alberta. But how's your journey been from a standpoint of just working here in Western Canada, or say even Alberta, with the solar?
Bumpy. It's been up and down. And unfortunately, depends on what political will there is in the province at the time as to how a lot of industries will grow. So we went through some conservative time, some UCP time, some NDP time, now back with the UCP. And I mean, this is Alberta. We have oil and gas and an amazing resource, of course. There's a misnomer out there that anybody that likes solar wants to shut off the taps. They don't want to drill, they don't want to burn, they don't want to do anything. And I just think, I'll just speak for myself personally and our company. We just think there's probably a little bit better way. A little bit better balance. We're never promoting that we get rid of gas and oil and that sort of thing. We need them. Of course we need them. We need the revenue. We need the products. We need the petrochemicals. We need all that stuff. But I think maybe that we could introduce a few other things to help balance that energy load a little bit better. And I think we can do a better job. So that's kind of what my focus is trying to develop projects, whether it's just on your house, whether it's at a Hutterite colony, whether it's at a food processing facility, wherever we can help to mitigate that carbon footprint. Everything has a carbon footprint. Solar has a carbon footprint. Wind has a carbon footprint.
It's definitely been my experience too, is that I always kind of felt like people thought whenever a windmill goes up that it's like they have to go burn down a couple pump jacks or something to, compensate for the sacrifice or something. But it always kind of got me was that like, it's, the conversations never kind of came down to why not both or why not all of it, right? Because we have like some of the best trades in the world. We have understanding of energy. We have the engineering horsepower. We have such a grasp on how to handle, the energy sector. Why not just, take on all of it? So that's always sort of been my mentality, was it never should have been, I don't know I wanted to figure out how the conversation got to the point where people were like, if a solar field goes up that we stop pumping oil, but it was just more for facilitation. Because I remember at one point I was reading an article that, and I could have this like wrong again. It was something to do with the lines that per watt, solar is the cheapest installation. So from manufacturing to a watt, solar is the cheapest total line compared to building really anything. And so I know a lot of places that I was dealing with where they had power demands that were like, maybe I'll try and break this down, was that we would have clients that would be running these gigantic motors. And the big thing is that they had paid a lot of money to have big energy lines run to their facilities, and they were buying the power off of the current power grid. And they had these humongous motors that required these startups, which would surge the services and stuff like that. The problem they were having is that if they wanted to add supplementary power, so a lot of people didn't understand that a facility will have, let's say it draws 5 megawatts or something. For them to then say, what we want is 1 more megawatt. Well, the issue a lot of people don't understand is they have to go dig up the lines, put in new transformers. They have to do quite a lot to add a megawatt to a facility. And so in some circumstances, adding it or supplementing it with alternative methods is a lot more cost effective and beneficial to the facilities and the operators, which again, long story is that then that money can be going to other things, maybe hiring people, increasing production, all those different things. So the assessment of using solar wasn't always specifically some type of alternative. It was supplemental. It was that this facility has a giant empty roof. Can we add power? And it's way more like cost effective, and it makes more sense from a business standpoint. And was this something that like you ran into a fair amount, or is like, what's your like, I don't know, maybe the average user of solar, like, or, you know, where do you find the most overall success for solar installations, I guess is maybe what I'm getting at.
It's everywhere.
Okay.
It's everywhere. Speaking to what you were talking about there, that would be, sounds to me like peak shaving, or,
yeah,
you know, like knocking that peak demand down.
Well, we get into a long conversation on how much it costs when you spike a transformer.
Absolutely.
Yeah. 3 months of absolute pain if you do that.
When we started, the price of power was around $50 a megawatt hour, or 5 cents a kilowatt hour, if you look on your residential bill. And so you could not produce your own power that low. It would probably cost you anywhere from 7 to 10 cents just to produce your own solar power, because of the cost of the equipment, labor, permitting, engineering, soft costs, all those things.
For our audience, what's the cost of power right now, out of curiosity?
So right now, we're anywhere between 8.5 to 12 cents.
Okay.
And it depends what kind of plan you're on. If you're on a fixed or a variable plan, I've seen some prices last December spike to 33 cents.
Whew.
So you really have to pay attention to your bill, and you got to do your homework to try to find the best deal. So if you can buy utility power cheaper than you can make your own solar power, the only motive you would have to do it is because you're green. You want to do your part.
Yeah.
And we have lots of clients that are that. I have a 91-year-old customer up in Crow's Nest Pass, and he says for him, it's the right thing to do. He says, I know it'll never pay for itself, but I'm going to leave it to my family, and I have the funds to do it, and that's just what I want to do, right? Now, solar has a huge economy of scale. So if you were to build on a house, you'll probably pay in the $2.50 to $3 per watt range. If you were to build a megawatt on the ground on a farm, you might be building that for $1.50. So the bigger it gets, the cheaper cost per unit, as with most things.
Yeah, right? Absolutely.
So if we can generate power solar-wise for 4 or 5 cents. The utility price is double that. So now it's starting to make sense. You throw into that, we've got some federal tax incentives. You can sell carbon credits. So you can contact a broker, and for every megawatt hour of power that you produce, you can get paid. So it's kind of starting to get like a perfect storm now here in Alberta. We have a deregulated retail system. So there's lots of competition out there as far as utility or power retailers. There's all kinds of stuff. There's programs like the Solar Club. So you can sell your solar power for 3 times as much as you buy the utility power for. There's all kinds of little niche things that you can do to make that ROI a lot better for solar now.
So if you're, say, just wanting to, like, you know, get involved in solar, you're saying there's some niche stuff. Is it still like, say, to your average consumer who, you know, set it, forget it kind of thing? Is the value below, there, or above using the utility right now, you'd say on average?
It's at par and possibly a bit lower.
Okay.
Depending on if you're getting any kind of rebate or subsidy or anything like that.
Okay.
I would say your payback on an average home is probably in the 7 to 8 year range.
Okay.
We used to be 15 to 20.
Yeah. So it's coming down.
It's coming down, but it all depends on the price of utility power.
Yeah. And that's always been a big circumstance, or a big effect on the circumstance of, you know, getting involved in this type of thing. Yeah. Have you guys like done much with solar and data? So like data centers and data farms, or like crypto mining, like the big power consumers?
We haven't done any solar yet. That's another market that we're looking at. There's so many places to look, but that's just the one we haven't gotten to yet. And they are massive users of power.
Yes.
Like they're not just looking to augment. They're truly massive. You would need fields, like you'd need, 50 megawatt, 100 megawatt farm.
Yeah.
To support some of these mining operations.
Well, and what's interesting enough is that, so kind of correlate. So our company is getting involved in AI, and we're starting to build our own like local edge servers. And just pure coincidence, we actually have a quote from you guys to come install 10 breakers inside of our control room for our edge stuff. And what a lot of people don't understand is just even those little interactions with ChatGPT and those models, the amount of power those things consume. The companies that are running those AIs are starting to look at buying power plants and buying out like the contracts on certain reactors and nuclear plants. I think it was Microsoft that was evaluating one of the nuclear reactors in the United States to buy the contract for them for the next like 10 years to say like, hey, we'll buy all the power, keep it all running, because they're trying to come up with, like what you're saying is that when you buy it like here and there, or what I'm doing, right? Like I'm just using our current tenancy for prototyping, and that's going to cost me more. But what they're saying is that like long term, we need to buy this at mass scale because we foresee the amount of power we're going to use to generate these products is going to be crazy. So do you think there's an opportunity for you in that, with like AI kind of coming up and probably becoming a different type of staple than cryptocurrency in the blockchain?
I do think there's a lot of opportunity for that. It gets us out of the small microgeneration and into the large microgeneration. So in Alberta, we have what's called the microgeneration regulation, and it's kind of the governing book that was created by Alberta Utilities Commission, the AUC. So they've split up the size of solar into small microgeneration and large microgeneration, and then distributed generation. So small microgeneration is under 150 kilowatts. Large microgeneration is 150 to 5 megawatts. And then you got your utility scale distributed generation. For us, we are in that 0 to 5 megawatt space, because not to say that we're not going to expand and get, we have worked on some utility stuff, but that's just kind of our niche.
Yeah.
And 5 megawatts may be large enough to help outfit a small crypto operation.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily know that it's going to be big enough for what some of these companies are looking for.
Yeah. Power draw wise, I would say like, arguably it just depends on scale, but I would say that like crypto and AI kind of have the same, I would say, physical space to power draw. So like what you could fit in, say, a CCAN for AI and crypto probably are close in power consumption. So they would be similar.
There's an opportunity for example, Amazon or Walmart or Microsoft. They will enter in what's called virtual power purchase agreements, virtual PPAs. So a developer would go to typically a farmer, and say, we want to lease X amount of acres, might be 100 acres, might be 1,000 acres, might be 7,000 acres. And they will propose to put up a solar plant. That power will locally get connected to our transmission distribution lines here in Alberta. However, the client might be in California. Yeah. Might be in Stockholm. He could be anywhere around the planet. And it's just virtually moving numbers. You're making power here, you're consuming power over here, but the dollars and cents just travel back and forth, just like the electrons. Right?
Okay. Yeah.
So, and that's all about, well, it's being green, but it's also about offsetting carbon footprint. So carbon is a market. It's a commodity. And so if a large emitter, let's say, needs to do something about their carbon footprint, they can either use less power, they can scrub their stacks, they can change their processes, they can build their own solar, put up their own wind, or they can go to somebody else that's already done it and buy their carbon offsets. So for example, I have a small solar array on my home, and technically every kilowatt hour that I generate offsets oil or fossil fuel generated kilowatt hour, technically. So that equates to a dollar amount. And it's an open market that you can buy and sell those. Now mine's too small to do anything with, so I would contract a broker. He would amalgamate mine with 1,000 other small clients. Now he's got a block of carbon offsets. He takes them to market and sells them. And then we all get our little piece.
Okay. So in that circumstance, then, like, say, I guess maybe a two-part question. So the first question I'd have is, with the carbon offset and sort of the let's just say the current future outlook of the way things are, where the carbon reduction system, let's say, that's within Canada at the moment, is effectively the balance that is that I, as Nathan Johnson, drive my car around and I produce a little bit of carbon, and then the big operators who are producing a ton of carbon are going to have to pay more. So I use a lot less carbon per capita than those big operators do. So they're being asked to pay that. With that offset and the amount that they're being asked to pay or compensate for, does it make just say installing a solar farm a profitable thing? So like if you just went and set up a megawatt worth of solar panels, would the carbon offset plus the price of the power pool and everything, would that be a profitable business?
That's why they're doing it.
Okay.
You bet.
Okay.
We've got farms in Alberta. In Claresholm, there's one around 160 megawatts.
Okay.
Out by Lomond, there's one that's around 450 megawatts. So you're talking,
That's some big numbers.
$1 billion.
Yeah.
Pushing
Yep.
right into that neighborhood of money. These are investments made by developers and investors globally that are looking for stable long-term returns. So investors have a mixed portfolio.
Yep.
We all do.
Yep.
And so, you've got your high risk, high return, low risk, lower return, and your middle of the road stuff. So solar is a generating asset. So I think if you look at any market, and the price of power is just like the stock market, it goes up and down hourly, changes, right? But if you look at it over time, it's going to increase. So if you have a stable generating asset that you don't have to put anything into, the sunshine's free. There's some maintenance that goes into it, right? It's got a lifespan of 25, 30 years, et cetera. That is a profitable venture if you're willing to wait the time.
Yeah, and that sounds like all investments where.
Well, basically it is. Yeah. I mean, the ROI, the payback on a solar farm may be, and I haven't really done the numbers on those big projects, but I would guess you're in the 5 to 6, 7 years. Right?
Yeah, that's
maybe a little bit longer, and then you've got 10 or 15 years of cash flow, positive cash flow.
Yeah, and I imagine the operating maintenance on it is probably not that heavy that you're going to be doing pretty well off an investment like that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you're spending, $500 million or $100 million or $50 million or whatever, and you got to pay a crew a couple $100,000 a year to go out and do some testing and replace the odd solar module, clean them, that sort of thing. It's not like the maintenance in a factory.
Yeah, and definitely based on my experience being more exposed to, seeing the machinery and everything that's going on with consuming and producing like carbon and stuff like that, it's been sort of an intriguing part to me to watch how the world, I'm not going to speak for Canada, but the world has identified and said, like, we need to bring the carbon emissions down as a whole. Do you think that the carbon, with the carbon reduction system in Canada, that it could just be profitable reducing carbon? Like, so not just generating the power too, do you think it could get to a point where solar could just run itself on just the carbon reduction part? Like, 'cause the truth is that I don't understand the numbers completely. So I just, from your experiences, you think it's possible that in 5 to 10 years, maybe just on carbon reduction alone?
It all comes down to the political will, who's going to be running the show. Federally, chances are in a year or so from now, things are going to be looking a little bit different than they are now. We may not even have a carbon tax. That being said, you brought up, it's a global thing now, right?
Yeah.
I think we're so far down that path that any country, or no country, is going to just back away from it all.
No, not whole hog.
There's money to be made.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
There's money to be made one way or another. So right now we're at about $35 a ton of CO2 equivalent emissions. So that's our carbon tax, basically, carbon levy. By 2030, I think it's 2030, 35. I think it's 2030. That's supposedly going to be up to $170. There are some estimates, and I mean, I'm not a specialist in this field by any means, but there are some studies that I've read that put the amount you have to charge to make a real difference in, because it's all about, part of it's about changing habits. The reason supposedly that the tax is there is so you and I do things differently. We don't drive our cars as much. We turn our furnace down at home. We recycle more. We do all these things. It's trying to change our habits. So it's like putting a tax on smoking. When cigarettes were 75 cents a pack, everybody smoked.
Yeah.
At $20 a pack, people start thinking about it.
Yeah.
At $100 a pack, you wouldn't have very many smokers.
No.
That's all that the carbon levy is supposed to do. So some studies have said that actual number to make people really pay attention is $300.
Okay.
So I wouldn't say we're having trouble, but there's a lot of pushback to get to 170.
Yeah.
I don't know if we'll ever get there. And I'm not saying I'm for it or against it. These are just what's going on out there. So to answer your question, maybe at $300, there might be a case to be made for just relying on the carbon offsets. But then I think we've lost sight of why we're doing it.
No, I would definitely agree. I think in my involvement with power generation and working on power plants, I was always amazed that the power generation, like a lot of people see a power plant and they're like, oh, they're producing power and then we pay for that and how it works. But it's a lot more intricate of a system. So an example in the solar thing, you're saying, part of running a solar plant is producing power, but it's also the carbon offsets. And there's other power production systems I've seen where they also, without talking about what they do, they have other ways of generating a lot of their income where the power actually isn't the main component. There's other activities that they do to help maintain the health of the power grid, to help reduce the usage of certain products. They do all sorts of different things to help do that.
Yep.
So what I find fascinating is when we talk about, whether you want to call it a carbon reduction system, carbon levy, carbon tax, all the words, whatever word doesn't make you grimace. I think one thing that I would love to say to the audience is that it's the idea to research, it's more efficiency. So one of the ways that they rate countries is by the amount of power they produce. And so one of the things that the idea of efficiency is getting more for less as a whole. So one thing that I was always kind of taken back by was that a lot of my customers, when we dealt with power, were more than happy to engage efficiency over the gain of more power for less cost. And so tying that all together in like kind of a part where it's combined with, say, carbon offsets versus using all of Alberta's natural resources versus renewables versus the external services, the other things that these places provide, kind of putting it all together makes more availability and a better availability. So people are more inclined to use more power because that's ultimately what we want to be doing is that, you started at King Electric, and I'm pretty sure the difference between when you were hooking houses up of how much power a house consumed versus now is like completely night and day. And so the big thing is that we go forward, we want the ability to actually have way more power and access because it does all sorts of amazing things like, dry our clothes faster, heat our house quicker, reheat food faster.
Oh, it would be doubled or tripled.
Right.
Easily.
Yeah. And so as we march forward, people want more and more things happening. We want, bigger TVs, faster digital connections. We want more comfort, better control over our environmental systems, different types of vehicles. And I'm saying specifically changing from, internal combustion engines to electric. I'm just saying people want choice. Like throughout all of history, people have wanted choices. There are still people out there riding horses because, horses are relatively economical, but the benefits of internal combustion were greater than a horse for certain applications. But the idea is that I think it's more about like embracing the variety. So that's why I really like the conversation about solar being more about the peripheral of it as opposed to just the direct thing where people are like, oh, it's these not so attractive looking black squares that are everywhere that are blocking out green, the green or whatever it is, but what they also imply as, usage of space.
We would call that dual use.
Okay.
So if we can find, and we're always searching for that, if we can find another value or another, almost a revenue stream for that business owner or that farmer or that homeowner, if they were going to build something and spend a bunch of money, but they could build it and generate power at the same time. Now they have a dual use. So for an example, if you go to a car dealership and you put up a solar awning and that protects the hail from hitting the cars, their insurance premiums go down.
Oh, yeah.
There's another revenue stream.
Yeah.
The loss of inventory from hail damage. Go to Cardston. Go to the Ford dealership in Cardston, what happened to them about 12 years ago.
Yeah.
Took out their whole inventory, right? Now they actually have bird netting over top of their cars. So it's things like that we can do. However, solar awnings are incredibly expensive. They're twice as much money, if not more, than putting it on your roof. So you got to find that happy medium, right? Does it actually offset? Like, is there enough of a dual use to offset that extra cost? But solar fences, solar guardrails, there's BIPV, which is Building Integrated PV. PV stands for photovoltaic. A lot of people have told me, I don't know that solar is quite ready yet. You know, it's a new technology and, you know, it's not very efficient and, you know, maybe someday, but not today. When do you think photovoltaics was discovered? How old do you think the technology is?
I'm guessing somewhere around 80-ish years.
The 1850s. A young 19-year-old French physicist by the name of Edmond Becquerel just stumbled onto the photovoltaic effect. And I could get into a whole science lesson and how PV actually works, but the point is it's been around a long time. Bell Labs in 1954 created the first commercially available solar panel, little 50-watt panel about 2 feet square. They put solar on one of the first satellites to power the communications. So we've been using it for a long, long time. So it's not, you know, when it gets here, or when it's going to be ready, it's here, it's ready.
Is there any kind of overall goals that Neu-Lite and the solar division have for your division and everything that you're doing that you guys would like to sort of accomplish here in Western Canada over, say, the next 2 to 5 years?
One of them, and it's always been one of my goals, is education, because there's so many myths surrounding the technology or I don't even know technology, the industry. Yeah. So when we had the solar boom, and we're in the middle of it in Alberta, a lot of cowboys came to town because Southern Alberta is the 6th best solar resource on the planet. We are on par with Florida. We have 333 usable sun days per year.
Oh, wow.
Solar doesn't like the heat. It likes cold and clear. Well, that's Southern Alberta. So between Saskatoon and Lethbridge, there's a little triangle down in there, and we have an amazing resource. Educating the public to what to look out for. I mean, we're always posting on social media, watch out for this, watch out for that. And when I go visit with customers, I always tell them, go get 3 or 4 good quotes from reputable companies and then make your decision. Who you're comfortable with, who's got the best quality, maybe not the best price, because it's not always price driven, but who's going to give you the best quality for your dollar, who's going to support you, who's going to be here. So education is really one of my goals to, and hopefully, you know, this podcast is all part of that. I had some goals about, I want to build this size of a solar farm. Well, knock that off. Now I want to build this size. Oh, knock that off. Yeah. So that's a moving target.
I appreciate you taking the time. You know, when you were saying you want to get the education out there, you definitely educated me a lot on just everything when it comes to solar, and even learning more about Neu-Lite. I know Neu-Lite's a bigger name here in where we are. It sounds like you guys have an incredibly bright future.
With their attitude towards team members and how to treat people, customers, how to treat them, suppliers, how to treat them. They've come a long way since wiring houses and Walmarts. Neu-Lite's been around since 1975. So now they have a big industrial presence. They have a big automation presence. We have an engineering presence. We have a renewable resource presence. They're going to be around for a long, long time. And it's fun to watch them.
No, that's awesome. Well, thanks for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun.
No, it was awesome. I appreciate you sharing all sorts of different stuff with us. And I hope everyone learned a lot today. It was a pleasure.
Mine as well. Thank you.